welcome to the show Hello World. Today's episode is going to be about public transportation. We have a lot of societies that have been closing down due to COVID-19, and a lot of industries are starting to prepare to open up for what we believe is going to be the new normal. Public transportation is one of those industries, of course, but it's actually a bit more complicated in that industry because they have a political assignment, so they need to offer public transport to their citizens. Most public transport authorities also have a target to increase traveling due to environmental reasons. And in the crisis, they were sort of in a situation where their political authorities are saying, well, we want you to provide public transport, but at the same time they're saying to the citizens you're not allowed to travel. So the situation is quite different than for many other industries, because you're actually not really have the same flexibility on how you want to act. So the topic of today is basically how do you handle that kind of situation going forward as well. With me in the sofa today I have Janne, who is a colleague of mine, and Jan, you've been working for many years with one of our customers, Stratiteq, who is the public transport authority in this region of Sweden. Could you just briefly tell us what you've been doing there?
Yes, thank you for having me. I've been working with Stratiteq and a couple of other public transport authorities in Sweden now for more than 5 years in a big development program where they actually had an opportunity to start developing a new ticketing and fare collection system which were supposed to and have replaced the old system end of last year. And I've been working with that together with a lot of my colleagues for the last 5 years.
So you know public transport very well then?
Yes.
But of course we have a guest today as well. So who are we meeting today, Janne?
We will meet Birgit Wirth, which is a person who has been working for Deutsche Bahn for many years, and currently have an assignment with Arriva in UK, where she's been the program manager for the Arriva Digital and Services platform. So welcome, Birgit. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Nice to see you.
It's all very good today, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
I hope you are well. I hope you're okay as well.
Perfect. Nice to having you. Birgit, can you describe how the UK and Germany in general have handled the corona crisis and what the effects have been on public transport?
Yeah, I can share with you what I've experienced. So both countries, the public transport have been hit more or less out of the blue, as it was for many other industries as well. And public transport was and is going through all those phases all the other industries are going through as well, which means from a normal business as usual to a situation which has not been experienced in decades. So in both countries, it has been reacted quite quickly. As for example, you could have seen TVMs and handrails have been cleaned more often from the very beginning. So there was a kind of shock to everybody, but then the next step was immediately to adjust capacities, which was very different in long distance traffic and urban traffic. And you could also see differences in regions, but everywhere the demand was dropping immensely on most destinations and in most cities. So there was quite an immediate reaction, and certainly public transport was still ongoing, as we have we have the task to offer this to the public, so with a reduced capacity. And after that, the first actions have been taken by the companies to adapt themselves to the new situation in the reactive way. So there were the first thoughts around what can we do to keep people safe, and social distancing was discussed. And I think now we are in a phase where we try to thrive things and actively and find a way how to operate in the future, or at least in the new normal for quite a while.
And Janne, I think in Sweden, as many know, we've not acted the same. We've not had the same strategy of closing down the whole society. But I believe that public transport has been quite hit here as well. So what are your experiences from Sweden?
I think there's a lot of similarities with the situation in UK and for instance in Germany within public transport. We haven't had a complete lockdown of society in the same way, but still the recommendations and restrictions from the health authorities has been more or less the same. And you can in Sweden also see a drop of travelers, maybe not 100% or 90%, but at least like 60 or 80%, even if we had society quite open. So it's been a massive impact on the public transport in Sweden as well.
Yeah, because I think you were saying, Birgit, when we spoke the other day, that in UK, for example, people were basically told that they were not allowed to use a tube unless they were sort of key workers, right?
Yeah, because I think the first objective was to bring all those key workers to work. And if you are living in a mega city like London, you can imagine that there is a lot of traffic still ongoing. And so people were asked to stay at home if they can. And the capacity then would be for the key workers to bring them safely to their shifts.
Yeah. And what do you think in terms of now that societies are sort of opening up and we see, people have changed their behavior and I think that when we are reasoning about what's going to happen, we believe that people are still going to be feeling insecure, want to, keep social distancing and hygiene and so on, that behavior is going to change for quite some time. So now that you are more or less opening up, what are you doing in the short term to be able to meet travelers and to make them feel safe to use public transport?
Yeah, so I think to start with how to keep everybody safe and getting people back using public transport. I think this is also an aspect we haven't experienced in Europe. So like face masks in other countries, like in maybe in China, or Japan, it's more popular. And so what I have seen are very different approaches from different companies and countries, but in a very transparent way to share best practice. So as it is new to everybody, I think we will see a learning curve. Which measures have the best and most impact. So I have seen from some of our companies having spots on the vehicle's floor where customers should stand to keep a distance, or some seats have been covered to prevent people from sitting too close to each other. Germany introduced, or DB in Germany introduced a bundle of measures like cleaning regional trains 3 times a day, doubling the staff cleaning on-site on long-distance trains, sanitizers everywhere, and certainly masks for everybody. And the German government says it's mandatory to wear a face mask using public transport. So there are, I would say, different actions and measures have been taken to keep our customers and also our staff safe and win them back using public transport. And I think in a short term, we will see a change in people's behavior, and it's maybe also linked to summertime, but what we certainly see is that people are using more bicycles or scooters where it's allowed, or even walking shorter distances. And I think this will last, at least for the summer period. And then I also think that as not all the borders are currently open, and I mean, this is starting now, I think people are thinking about spending their holidays in their home countries or maybe in their neighbor country. So I think this will have in a short term at least, an impact on holidays as well. And there was something which was already starting before, which was a demand from office workers to work more remotely from home or more flexible. And I think the crisis is more an accelerator for this kind of development. So the whole commuting, I think, will change right now, even in if we are going back. I think, and the offices also need to make sure that there is a kind of handling of the situation. So I think those are the impacts I would say we can see already.
Yeah, and if we end up in a situation where people are coming back to public transport during the fall or next year, what do you see as the long-term effects? What changes can you see long-term in the public transport services provided?
Oh, this is a challenging question, as this whole situation is for us in Europe quite new, and so I can only share my personal guess on that, what I'm happy to do. So as said, so some developments we have already seen, like changing in commuters' behavior. So we also had already discussions that people don't want to spend their money on normal season tickets, that they want to have a bit more flexible fares and pricing, like pay as you go with price capping. So this has been already started. And I think with this challenge we currently have, I think this will be coming up much quicker as maybe we thought before the crisis. And I think another part will be that business travel. I mean, now everybody was investing a lot of money in technology and setting up people working from home. And as we are doing this, so I'm not in Sweden, I'm in London for this, I think part of the business travel will be absorbed through new technology, and I think this will last. How much it is, I think it's hard to forecast, but I'm really convinced that there will be a change. And then around, I would say, leisure traveling, I don't know how people will behave in a really long term, but if people are enjoying to be in, I would say, near shore or in their own country, or maybe in countries they close to them, I could say that this has an impact as well. And this is from a leisure perspective, I think there will be demand on public transport increasing, because people then maybe are visiting more friends and family and seeing what's closer, instead of going maybe abroad in a long term. But this is a bit a guess, and it's a bit like looking in a glass bowl. Yeah. But that is what I could imagine would happen.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing you're discussing as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same topic that are discussed in Sweden right now, with more flexible pricing, more flexibility in general, work from home, and also the long distance travels will be reduced, I think, which will lead to more vacations nearby, etc. Yeah,
well, so, that could actually drive maybe more traffic,
and that could increase the
trains and so on,
the short distance public transport volumes. Yeah.
Obviously, this is going to cost a lot for the society, and we don't know exactly. I don't think any country yet knows the cost of the COVID-19 handling. But we can assume that we're going to have budget cuts, not the least when we go into 2021. So besides staff reduction, I would assume that maybe data could, for example, be used to increase efficiency. And within public transport, we have a lot of data. So Birgit, what's your view on that? How do you believe that data can be a part of maybe the cost reduction that you need to do to increase efficiency?
Well, I mean, a crisis indeed is always that you have a closer look on costs and for what you are using the money. And in public transport, indeed, we have a lot of data, and we are using already data and artificial intelligence and algorithms for, an example, predicting events and all sorts of different use cases. But I think what we can do in the future is much more around flatten the curve, because we have really high peak times everywhere. And this is a bigger challenge than to handle if we have bigger crowds right now. And we could use data to predict this and also to instantly give people and information and alternatives. And maybe a good example is, so if you are using the DB Navigator, which is the journey planning and mobile ticketing tool, DB will give you an information of all trains then which are having a seat reservation more than 50% already. So I think using data to predict and to give information to customers will help us to flatten the curve. And this is for us more efficient than in terms of the capacity we are offering. I think this is one topic we can do. And then there is also behind the scenes, we can use data, for predictive maintenance and use cases, which data we are using, which is not only customer behavioral data, it's also around technical data to increase our efficiency in operations. So I think there are a lot of use cases now coming up, have been maybe discussed previously, but now there is more, I would say, pressure to work with data as it maybe was before.
Yeah. I know, Jan, for example, within Skånetrafik and another, I assume within other public transport authorities as well, we've been working a lot with collecting data and analyzing data. What's your view on it? What do you believe? How are these companies going to be more data driven in the future to meet the demands?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, Birgit, because I think that in the short term or mid-term perspective, I think predictive or crowd predictions will be of essence when it comes to being able to, as an individual, being able to manage your own social distancing. So I think that, and that's very data driven, both occupancy levels on buses and trains, but also on bus stops and train station, etc. I think also, as you described, Birgit, the cost cutting or the efficiency can be increased when it comes to traffic planning, route optimization, and also I think around demand responsive transport solutions, which will give the public transport authorities or operators a possibility to only have vehicles in traffic where they're needed.
Yeah.
So that's basically the same as your view, Birgit.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I think the interesting thing is that when crises occur, and I think this has been very visible in this crisis as well, we suddenly are able to do so many more things. We are working together with one target. We remove the hurdles that we normally have. We are focused on finding solutions that are quick and that can be activated right now, because in 3 months it's not really important anymore, or it's going to be too late. So it's interesting to see, I believe at least, that the agility in terms of ways of working, both from a management perspective and a leadership perspective, but also from a technological perspective, is increasing a lot with the crisis. So, Birgit, when we do this change, it's obviously a transformation to the new normal, and change normally takes time, and it's difficult. But How do you view, how does sort of in the long run the organization and leadership needs to change to be able to sort of keep up this maybe new speed and agility in the way we're acting? How do we secure that that continues?
So the good thing in a crisis is that you are also indeed discovering a new behavior. And I think we need to make decisions quite quickly, and because the environment and the challenges we always have, they will occur in the one or other way anyway. So I think it's like making quick decisions, having really leadership which is responsible, taking the actions. And we also need to learn that maybe we are doing a wrong decision, and then we need just to be brave enough and say, okay, this is maybe not the right way. We need to change, and we need to adapt new stuff and then maybe slightly correct it. And I think we also are now working very close together with other industries, or I would say competitors, and I call it competition, which means this is something we need to keep up as well, working closely across industries, and we also can learn a lot from other industries and vice versa. And I think then we are prepared for the future, and it's also the integration, and Janne, you said around demand responsive traffic or transport. I think in the future, like bus stops or stations are then maybe something like a mobility hub, so that we are integrating much more different modes of transport and supporting the customer to find their mobility solution easily and helping them for the whole mobility chain. And I think then we are good to go for the future.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how everything maybe accelerates. I mean, I know that you've been speaking about a lot of ideas and innovation and stuff for the future, but there are always things in sort of coming in the way, and I think some of that is sort of removed because we need to realize that we have to act quicker. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Birgit. It was nice to have you on the show and to hear your learnings from both UK and Germany. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So Janne, what do you say? What are you seeing sort of that the Swedish public transport authorities need to do to sort of keep up the speed?
I think what Birgit says is applicable also to Sweden, and what we can see now and also hope for is that there will be a higher level of leadership courage in making changes in a fairly rigid system as the public transport in Sweden. I think we will see more of the short-term activities, testing, and have the courage to say to the public that we're not trying this, and if it don't work, we will remove it and replace it with something else. Yeah. So I think that's more or less what will happen now, which also is, of course, a big opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's actually interesting because, I mean, that's more of a normal way to work with if you work with digital projects, because that's sort of the agility that you want to have a small product and then test it and then change it and improve it. And it's interesting to see that normal organizations, when you sort of move into being more software companies or adding software to your model, that suddenly that sort of those principles are actually starting to be applied on other areas as well.
Yeah. And I also think it's a must at this time because we don't actually know what the new normal will be.
No.
So we need to test and test and test in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining today, and I think it's been really interesting to get both your view and Birgit's from Germany and UK. And thank you for joining us today as well. So remember to follow us on LinkedIn so you don't miss any future episode. I hope you've enjoyed today's, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.